Did you guys get a program?
Yes.
Very good. All right, here's the deal. I was just saying, as you walked in, that this isn't going to be the normal sermon that you typically hear here from me. We've been in Luke forever, okay? And so pretty much where we dropped off last week is where we pick up next week, and that's how it's been going. And when we get to parts in the Word, and those of you who've been here for a while, you know how the Word is written on different levels, and there's the base level, but then there's always the kind of the deeper meanings behind that. That's usually what we focus on. And I tell you things like that doesn't negate the base level, right? The base level still exists, but we're going to focus on higher. I don't know, like my book, I sign it with 1 Timothy 5:8, which is, he who does not provide for his own, and especially his own household, has denied the faith and is worse than an infidel. Okay? And so the base level is, hey, you got to provide, it's a preparedness thing. You got to take care of your people, especially your own house, and if you don't do that, you're bad. But the deeper meaning of that is not beans and rice and stuff like that. The deeper meaning is being the spiritual head of your family, and you need to bring the instruction of the Most High Yah to your family, and da-da-da-da. That doesn't negate the fact that you got to prepare for your family. All right, and we usually focus on the higher things. Today we're going to focus on the base level because I think we're going to cover something today that people, and I know nothing about you, so maybe you do understand, but most people don't really understand. So, with that, we heard Brother Joe read this morning from Nehemiah chapter 2, which is where we're going to be most of the time. The verses we're going to cover on the back of your program. That Artaxerxes, he's the king, and he granted Nehemiah permission to go to Jerusalem and help rebuild the wall around the city. Okay, so Nehemiah asked to do that. He was the king's cupbearer, and he said, okay. But before we get to that, we should probably look at a little bit of background just to kind of put it in historical context. And so somewhere around the year 538 BY, before Yeshua. See, I thought that was kind of cute, right? They write BCE when they're being politically correct, before Common Era, and before that was before Christ, And anyway, but 538 before Yeshua, Cyrus the Great had permitted the Israelites, primarily from the tribe of Judah, right? They were the Jews that were in Babylonian captivity. Remember, the southern kingdom got taken in. He let them go back and start rebuilding the temple, and so they started that around 538, okay? And then about 80 years later, in 548, before Yeshua walked the earth this time, Artaxerxes was now the Babylonian king, not Cyrus the Great, and he let Ezra go back and start rebuilding the temple, right? And we know that story. And so that was like in 458. And then about 14 years later, Artaxerxes lets Nehemiah go and start rebuilding the walls of Jerusalem, right? And that's where we are now. So it was a little bit after Ezra. And he not only lets him go, but he gives him these letters of safe passage, right? To get him through all the different lines of soldiers and warlords and everything, because he's the king of Babylon, but he's got all these lesser kings and leaders and stuff. And so he goes, take these, and oh, by the way, because you asked for it, here's a letter that lets you go in and log the trees in the forest once you get there to use the materials that you need to rebuild the walls. And here's the deal. Cities, important cities, large cities, were walled. They had a wall around them, and that was to protect. It's like a fortress, right? It's like, almost a castle, if you will, with a whole city in the middle of it. And that was to protect the people, their way of life, their culture, just to protect the people that were inside that city. And so great cities had big walls, and of course Jerusalem's wall had been torn down and destroyed. So, we can read in chapter 2 of Nehemiah, verse 10, where Brother Joe left off, that when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, heard that he was coming to rebuild the walls, Nehemiah was coming, it grieved them exceedingly that there was come a man to seek the welfare of the children of Israel. These guys were not happy that the defenses of Israel were about to be improved. And they were not happy, and so at first what they did is they made fun of Nehemiah and of the Jews, of the people who had returned, and their efforts. And in chapter 2, verse 19, we read this: But when Sanballat the Horonite and Tobiah the servant, the Ammonite, And Geshem the Arabian heard it. They laughed us to scorn and despised us and said, what is this thing that ye do? Will ye rebel against the king? All right, so they're making fun of him. All right, it's like, why are you building the walls for? Are you worried about the king? You know, Artaxerxes, right? And so that brings us to where we are now and what we're going to cover today, which is in chapter 4 of Nehemiah. And you guys can turn there because we're pretty much going to stay in chapter 4 of Nehemiah. Nehemiah's enemies, the Jews' enemies, are unhappy that they're there and they're starting to rebuild the wall. All right, so that's kind of the setting and the efforts. Verse 1, chapter 4. But it came to pass that when Sanballat heard that we builded the wall, he was wroth. And he took great indignation, and he mocked the Jews. And he spake before his brethren and the army of Samaria, and he said, what do these feeble Jews? Will they fortify themselves? Will they sacrifice? Will they make an end in a day? Will they revive the stones out of the heaps of rubbish which are burned? Now Tobiah the Ammonite was by him, and he said, even that which they build, if a fox go up, he shall even break down their stone wall. And so what they're saying is, hey, look at these weak, feeble people, these Jews who just kind of come back. You know, they got conquered, now they're kind of trickling back. What are they going to do? Rebuild their fort? Ooh. Are they going to build it out of all those burned stones that were knocked down the first time that are all laying down there in heaps? Do they think that this is going to be an easy undertaking? I mean, do they think they're going to be able to do this in a day? What are they going to do? Sacrifice to their God so that he miraculously helps them build this thing? And so they're just making fun of him, and even to the point of, even a little furry fox could knock down anything these guys build up. All right, because foxes weren't held in high regard, despite my fine last night. But here's the deal. There's a lot of truth in their scorn. And there usually is. When someone scorns another person, it hurts, it stings, because there is truth in it. The Jews were weak and feeble. It was not an easy task set before them, and they did not really have the proper materials to easily build a wall. All right, so what these guys were saying kind of rung true. But, this is a big but, what these scoffers did not understand is that Yahweh was on their side. Right? They didn't get that the Most High had laid his hand upon this. And we can read in Romans 8:31, what shall we then say to these things? If God be for us, who can be against us? Man, and that is something to remember. When we are on his path or we are walking in his way, it really doesn't matter who's against us because we've got him. And I praise Yah for that. And we talked about that earlier with this thing going on with Job. So, despite our difficulties in life, despite problems we can encounter, despite scoffings, and man, a lot of us get scoffings from our families, I know, that we receive. We have to know that we can do all things through Christ, which strengthens us, right? We can do all things through Hamashiach, who strengthens us. And we have to internalize that and realize that and believe that and then act on that we can do anything when he's on us. And so, in the face of this scoffing, of this criticism, of this ridicule that he's receiving, what does Nehemiah do? How does Nehemiah handle what's being thrown at him? Does he argue? Does he try to explain to these people? Does he confront them back? No. He prays. That's how he handles this. He directs his concerns to the Most High Yah, and his focus, therefore, is on the right place. He's not focused on the bad guys. He's not focused on the scoffers. He's focused on Yahweh. And so look at verse 4. Hear, O our God, Shema Elohim, for we are despised, and turn their reproach upon their own head, and give them for a prey in the land of captivity. And cover not their iniquity, and let not their sin be blotted out from before thee, for they have provoked thee to anger before the builders. The key point here is, no matter what's happening in our life, we should always turn to the Father first. Always. That's our first course of action that we should do. And so built we the wall, and the wall was joined together unto the half thereof, for the people had a mind to work. So, the wall is now half complete. You can picture it, it's half built up as high as it's going to go, and I don't know how high they built this wall, all right? Maybe I should, but I don't. But it's a big wall, and it's half done. So why, or better yet, how was this wall built? How was it built? It was built because the people had a mind to work. The people had a desire to do the work. Nehemiah prayed to Elohim. All right, we get this. First thing he did. Fine. But then the people had a desire to work. Now, I submit to you, it was a Yah-given desire to work, right? He put it on their hearts to get out there and get on it. But in the end, it's their attitude towards work. And work is hard. I mean, this is physical, chopping down trees, dragging them up, cutting off the limbs, stacking rocks. Hebrew slaves, right? Which we hear in Shofar Mountain a lot. All right, look at verse 7. But it came to pass that when Sanballat and Tobiah and the Arabians and the Ammonites and the Ashdodites heard that the walls of Jerusalem were made up, and that the breaches began to be stopped, then they were very wroth. And they conspired all of them together to come and to fight against Jerusalem and to hinder it. Okay, so despite the letters of safe passage from Artaxerxes, the big king of Babylon, despite those letters, they're like, all right, that's it. We have had enough. These guys, they're starting to get a really good wall up, and we need to go take care of that right now. Let's attack them now before they get their wall built all the way up, and we're not going to be able to successfully attack them. And so that's pretty scary. The wall is only half built. They're not ready yet to defend against an attack, and the enemy is fixing to attack them. What to do? What are they going to do? And that's why we're doing this sermon today. That's why we're not in Luke today. Because what we're going to look at today is biblical defense. And I don't mean in the spiritual way. I'm not going to talk to you, which is all just as true about the gospel armor and all that. We're going to talk about actual physical defense. And we're going to take some lessons from this chapter on Nehemiah. I saw a video. Does anybody here know Brother Mike Holland, Pastor Mike Holland? He posted a video. He didn't make the video. He reposted it. And I'd seen it before, but I saw it in a different frame of mind. And it was basically a narration by bad guys saying how they were going to go after people once the balloon went up and chaos reigned, and what they were going to do and how they were going to attack people. And it's pretty scary, right? If you don't know what to do against people like that, against dangerous people. And here's the deal. And I mentioned this a little bit earlier. Tough times are coming to this country. Whether it's the end times or not, tough times are coming. This economy cannot stand. This economy is going to fall. People keep talking about solar flares. Why do we keep reading about them? The big one's coming eventually. And if we're facing it when it happens, things are going to change here in America overnight. Economy, solar flares, war. We can have a war here. Just because we haven't had a war in our soil forever, it seems like, doesn't mean we won't have one. And so tough times are coming. And some folks, they live alone, right? They live in a little apartment, or they live in a house all by themselves. Or some folks live on ranches or farms. And some folks are blessed to live in communities. And so regardless of where these people live, when the balloon goes up, when chaos reigns, for whatever reason that happens, and it can happen, and it could happen very quickly, where that, again, is economic collapse, political, we were talking about that guy today, James Yeager, what he said. I mean, there's people getting angry, and things could happen, So whatever the cause, it could be anarchy, whatever. When that happens, bad people are gonna do bad things to good people. They are. And just look at history of mankind. Look at history, look what's going on right now in different parts of the world where there's anarchy. Bad things happen, and usually bad people operate in groups, right? And so it's a group coming at good people. And so how should good people respond? What should good people do? And so that's what we're going to look at today. So, look at verse 9. First thing we need to do. Nevertheless, we made our prayer unto Elohim. First, we pray. Pray first. Pray often. Pray early. Right? Pray unceasingly. We need to pray. We need to open up a line of communication with our Father and get that going. Put your trust, what you trust, in Yahweh, right? Fear Him, follow Him, seek His blessings and His help first. But here's the important part. Here's where a lot of Christians and a lot of, Torah observant, Messianic, Israelites, whatever you want to call them, Hebrew roots, or people of God, where they fail. They say, well, I'm going to put all my trust in God. Very good. The next step is you've got to get busy. You've got to get to work and start doing stuff. And you can do that while you trust God. And so, verse 9 again, nevertheless, we made our prayer to Elohim and set a watch against them day and night because of them. And so the second thing to do is establish security watches, day and night. 24 hours a day, somebody's got to be on security. Somebody's main job is watching. Now, this takes people to do, and this takes time, right? It takes time out of their day. It takes time out of a schedule. And therefore, this takes planning. Where are they actually going to watch from? These things have to be decided early, right? What are they going to eat? How are they going to be sheltered from the elements? Like today it's cold. Some days it's hot. Some days it's raining. How are they going to handle that? How are they going to be relieved? How are they going to take their turns when they're not watching to go work? Because these people, this watch, the only thing they do is watch, right? They're the security apparatus. They're like a guards in a guard tower, right? Those are things to think about. We are supposed to be a watchful people. We are supposed to pay attention. Yeshua said, what I say unto you all, watch. He wasn't just talking, if you look at that in Mark 13, he wasn't just talking about watch for his return. It was watch for everything else that was going on in and around them. All right? That's why we pay attention to the moon and what's going on in the news and everything else. We're supposed to watch. Verse 10, and Judah said, the strength of the bearers of burdens is decayed, and there is much rubbish, so that we are not able to build the wall. Now, this is the word from Judah. Judah is the strongest of all the tribes. And so when Judah says, man, we are just too tired, there's too much rubbish, there's too much to do, really, we're done. All right, we can't go on. That is horribly discouraging. They're halfway done. They're only halfway done, or in my mind, they're halfway done, right? They're almost done. In my mind, I always think on the positive side. And yet they're saying, hey, we're done. We can't go any further. And this is common in great undertakings. See, people at first, when they start something, man, they're motivated. They're full of energy. They want to get on it. It's like, yeah, let's do this thing. And then just the day in, day out drudgery of working on and on. It just starts wearing on you. It wears on you physically. It wears on you emotionally. It wears on you mentally. I mean, it just starts. And if you don't have the Most High, it starts wearing on you spiritually, right? All this work. And so that is something for us to be aware of, and that is something for us to guard against. We have to realize that people always start out hard and then they just taper off way too soon. Here's another point. There's too much rubbish to build the wall. The accumulated trash of the previously destroyed wall that had fallen down, and the burnt timbers and the dirt and the mud and the rocks and all that stuff, all that had to be moved out of the way before they could actually lay the foundation again and start building up again. That was a lot of work that didn't look like a whole lot of benefit. I mean, people who've been down in Shofar Mountain, carrying rocks and shoveling clay and mud, and that's a lot of work, and sometimes you see fast progress, and sometimes it's like, I've been working for 3 hours, and I don't really see a lot, and so it kind of takes it out of you. But here's the deal. It's the same in our spiritual life, right? we've got a lot of rubbish that we're carrying around from our previous life before, the Most High Yah opened our eyes to Yeshua and to the way, right? Before he showed us how he wanted us to live. And we've got to get rid of that rubbish out of our life before we can really be completely rebuilt, right? And so there's that spiritual aspect of this wall. Get rid of that rubbish in your life and let him start rebuilding you. Now, there's a lot of lessons like that in this bit of scripture, but like I said, we're not going into those today. All right, today we're going to focus on the base defensive level measures that we can take as a people. You guys can discern the higher spiritual, I know everybody here almost, and you guys are pretty mature, and you can look into this again, maybe tonight or tomorrow or something, and say, all right, here's some higher spiritual lessons, but today we're going to focus on the base. So look at verse 11. And our adversaries said, they shall not know, neither see, till we come in the midst among them and slay them and cause the work to cease. The enemy is plotting a surprise attack. They're plotting a raid on the wall, right? They're going to go hit them hard, hit them fast while they're not ready for it so they can stop the work. Verse 12. And it came to pass that when the Jews which dwelt by them came, they said unto us 10 times, from all places whence ye shall return unto us, they will be upon you. Now, here's another tactical point that we need to take into account when we're planning defenses based on biblical means, if you will. The Jews which dwelt by them came, and they said unto us. What Nehemiah had done was establish what we called, when I was working in that realm, a defensive source network. Right? He went out there and he recruited people who were friendly to him to let him know what was going on with the enemy. These people were living close to where the enemy was, and they overheard snippets of conversation, and so they would come and report it to him. He didn't have just one guy. Here we read, they told us 10 times, he had several people that all came and reported to him. Why did he have several people? You have several different people reporting to you so that you know you're getting the truth. In the mouth of 2 or 3 is a thing established, right? So if 3 people tell you, hey, they're bringing tanks up Route 50, they're probably bringing tanks up Route 50. And so that's what he has done. But here's another thing. When one sets up a network of agents, this doesn't just happen. Right? It just, people are just going to come tell me what's going on. No, it takes time. It takes planning. It takes investment. It takes effort. You've got to get out there and meet people. You have to establish rapport. You have to do things for people so that they like you. I'm not saying compromise your integrity. I'm just saying help the people out. Be that friendly person so that they care about you, so that when something bad is coming your way, they let you know. Hey, there's a big bad motorcycle gang and they're coming town to town to town. They're coming up towards you. You might want to know about that. And so that's kind of what Nehemiah has done. You have to have set up a way, a means for them to get the information to you. Okay, so you've got these people out there that are watching and listening for you. How are they going to inform you what's going on? And then you've got to know, all right, what am I going to do with this information when I get it? How am I going to compile it? How am I going to analyze it? How am I going to put this big picture together? Again, something you've got to think about in advance. And then finally, when you get that information and you put that picture together, what are you going to do with it? What are you going to do about it? You know what they're doing. What now? Look what Nehemiah does. Because see, Nehemiah has a plan what he's going to do when he gets it. Verse 13. Therefore, he got all this information. Therefore, set I in the lower places behind the wall, and on the higher places I even set the people after their families with their swords, their spears, and their bows. All right, so the Jews discover that there is an attack imminent. All right, they are gearing up and they're coming for us. They're going to do a surprise attack. And so everyone is armed. Every single person is armed, and they send them all to battle stations. We had a friend who used to yell in his house, "Battle stations!" And his dogs would go crazy. They'd go barking and running all around the house. It was kind of funny. But here's the deal. He is arming all his people, and they're all going to where they're supposed to be. Now, they're assigned positions. This is not chaos. This is not just everybody grabbing a gun and going where they want. Half of the people are going to defensive positions. Half of the people are going behind the half-built wall. All right, so they're going to defend that wall. Half of the people are going into overwatch positions where they can see further and they can probably see the guys who are on the wall and protect them. So there's been some thought, there's been some planning as to what's going on. Everybody has a place. Everybody's armed, and everybody knows what they're supposed to do. The people are armed, by the way, with whatever they have. All right, you notice there's a variety of weapons there. It's just like, hey, bring what you got, all right, and we'll work with it. So first things first, tactically, first things first is to pray. First things first is to put out security. When you know something's coming, we have to have security out there. And so Nehemiah does that. And then, only then, after security has been placed out, people are watching, people are ready to repel an attack, can we sit down and have our meeting, have our little powwow, our little planning session. Look at verse 14. And I looked, and I rose up, and I said, this is Nehemiah, and I said unto the nobles, and to the rulers, and to the rest of the people, be not ye afraid of them. Remember Yahweh, which is great and terrible, and fight for your brethren, and your sons, and your daughters, your wives, and your houses. Nehemiah, after he establishes security, gathers his subordinate leaders. His captains of tens and his captains of, 30s and 50s and hundreds, right? He gathers these people together to give them his plan. Now, here's the deal. He has subordinate leaders. See, he has organization. He's already set that up. When he gathers these people, he's not like, all right, Brother Justin, you're going to be in charge of this side of the room, and Brother Darian, you're going to be in charge of this side of the room. All right, I need you two to come here. No, he's already set this up, all right, because he's organized. He's organized to work. He's organized to fight in this case. And that's something else we have to think about. How are we going to be organized within our group? The Army does this. The Army has the lowest level of organization is a 2-person buddy team. All right, so you have a buddy, and then 2 of those makes a fire team, and 2 of those makes a squad, and 3 squads is a platoon, 3 platoons is a company, and it goes all the way up to divisions and corps and brigades and stuff like that. But there's organization and there's leadership, and you can break it down that way. And that's something to think about. And so he gathers the people together, his leaders together, and the first thing he tells them is, fear not. Do not be afraid. Yahweh's got us. We are on his side. We are his people. And then he tells them, after he tells them that, hey, remember what you're fighting for. All right, you're fighting for, what do we read here? Your brethren, your sons, your daughters, your wives, and your houses. And so what he's doing is he is telling them, be encouraged because Yah is on our side. And then he's telling them, be motivated. Do your job because you're fighting for everyone that's important to you in this world right now. And so encouragement and motivated. What Nehemiah is doing here, you see in all the great war movies. You see it in, what's that Mel Gibson Celtic movie? Braveheart, when he's on his horse going back and forth. And you see it in one of the Gettysburg movies done terribly. And it's the leader rallying his troops, right? He's giving them that speech. But really, is Nehemiah here really rallying his troops? Or is he rallying his leaders? He's rallying his leaders. Right? He can't talk to all the Israelites that are out there right now. Despite the fact that it looks really good in the movies when Mel Gibson's riding back and forth, do you think those people could actually hear what he was saying if it was real? No. You call your leaders in, you give them the speech, and then what do the subordinate leaders have to do? They got to go rally their troops, right? Hopefully repeating in their own words, but with their own personality and action and forcefulness. Hey, first off, men, we got God on our side. We're going to win. Second of all, remember what you're fighting for, right? And they have to give that speech to their men. And so your subordinate leaders have to be leaders. All right, look at verse 15. And it came to pass, when our enemies heard that it was known unto us, and God had brought their counsel to naught, that we returned all of us to the wall, every one unto his work. And so the enemy finds out that they're ready. We can't do a surprise attack because they're not going to be surprised, and they back off. There's a mini lesson there, which I don't really want to go into right now too deeply, but you know what? The enemy has spies too. So there's also this thing called information warfare campaigns. Maybe they said we're ready, and they wanted them to know we're ready so they don't attack us, and that just gets kind of convoluted. But something to think about. Anyway, the enemy backs off so the Jews can go back to work, and before, when they were ready for battle, everybody, la-di-da-di, is in a battle position with their weapon ready to go. Now that the tension has slightly decreased, they can go to work. But look at how they go back to work. They know that even though an attack is not imminent, there's people out there who bear them ill will. I can easily put this in my mind that there are bad people running around during a time of chaos, and maybe they're operational in our area, and so there's bad people. So how are we going to get work done around the place? Whether that place is your house with your tomato plants, or that's a community with 150 people living on it. What are you going to do? Verse 16. And it came to pass that from time to time that half of my servants wrought in the work, and the other half of them held both the spears, the shields, and the bows, and the habergeons, and the rulers were behind all the house of Judah. So half of the available people are working, and half of the available people are still pulling security. The only work they're doing is pulling security. They are watching, they're ready to fight, they're ready to go. They're not hoeing potatoes out in the field. They're not fixing the barn. And here's another reality that people don't think about who haven't been in the military. This half, of which, half are doing security and half are doing work, that's not half. It's probably a third or less of the total force when you combine both of them. Because here's the deal, there's 24 hours in a day. Somebody's got to guard at night. Somebody has to be on security at night, and that guy who's on security at night has to sleep sometime, right? So that I can sleep at nighttime, somebody else has got to be awake. So somebody's sleeping during the daytime. Somebody is relieving somebody who's on guard duty. And so at any given time, all your people aren't working because you can't stay up 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so there's people sleeping of your security force and your workforce. It's not like normal life. The security people are doing nothing else but pulling security. And that's an important point. I'll get to that in a little bit. But they're pulling security day and night and day. The enemy knows when we're weak, and he prods us when we're weak. I could take that on a spiritual level too, right? But so can you. And so we have to be on guard all the time. Those are things to think about and things to plan for. Okay, so some people are working, some people are pulling security, they're guarding. Look at verse 17. They which builded on the wall, and they that bear burdens with those that laded, every one with one of his hands wrought in the work, and with the other hand held a weapon. For the builders, every one had his sword girded by his side, and so builded, and he that sounded the trumpet was by me. And so half the people are on guard, and half the people are working, but you know what? All the people who are working are armed. Reminds me of a certain day down at Shofar Mountain when people were moving rocks, and every time people bent over, I saw a Glock sticking out of the back of somebody's waistband. It's like, wow, we don't really have a real enemy out there right now, but they're practicing. They are ready to respond, the workers as well. But that doesn't count as security. Some people, and man, I'm on a lot of internet forums for preparedness, right? And I talk to a lot of people about that. Some people picture themselves, and they have these idyllic pictures of that people drew during the expansion towards the west of the whites are going west and they're fighting the bad Indians and they're trying to do the garden. And so here's the guy hoeing in his field and he's got his flintlock rifle leaning up against a bush or something, right? So it's close at hand, so I have security. Some people actually think, well, I'm still going to do everything around the farmstead and I'll just wear my pistol and have my rifle over there and I'll be able to work. That's not security. When you're down on your knees pulling a carrot or pulling a weed out, you're not watching and you're not pulling security. And so it is really important to understand that you have to have security. I mean, we could go to the story about selecting people, and by the way, they drank out of a river, right? I'll go there later on another time. That's in the Word too, though. But Nehemiah knows that. Nehemiah knows that you have to have a dedicated security force. And something else. What good is a sword or a spear or a bow or a pistol or a shotgun or a rifle if you're not trained to use it? What good is that? Do you think Nehemiah knew that? I think Nehemiah knew that. Do you think Nehemiah probably had training for his people, had set up some kind of form? Because in the beginning, not everybody knows how to wield a sword. Not everybody knows how to shoot a bow, but now we all got to grab one. Do you think he took some of his guys that knew how to use these things and said, hey, 2 hours a day, you're going to work with these guys on swords, and Brother Justin, you're going to work over here with these guys on the bow? I think he did. How motivated do you think the people were to learn? After a hard day of moving rocks and logs all day and building a wall, At first, just like building the wall, I bet they were highly motivated. Man, people are coming to attack us. Brother Justin, show me how to shoot this bow, man. And then at the end, it's like, man, they haven't attacked us. Then why are we playing with these bows? I want to get some sleep. I want to go take a shower. Do I have to shoot this bow 40 times? Yes, you do. All right, think about that. That's dealing with people. Anyway, the folks are working while they're armed. Some are guarding, and Nehemiah is supervising. Nehemiah's going here and there behind the work lines, and he's encouraging some people. He's exhorting some people. He's probably making some corrections on other people. Hey, tighten that up, or hey, fix that right. But he's walking all around, and he's doing his leadership thing. Right? He's making sure everything's going, and he has other leaders helping him do that. But notice what it says about the guy with the trumpet, the shofar. And he that sounded the trumpet was by me. Wherever Nehemiah went, I brought a training aid. I never do this in my sermons. He brought his little shofar man, right? He probably had a big shofar. But, he's got his little guy running around with him wherever he goes. And why does he do that? It's his commo man, right? It's the guy who's going to signal everybody else. I get to blow it, right? He can sound the alarm to people or send out information via his shofar when they need it. It's important that you be able to inform all your people what's happening and what to do, all of your people, in a short period of time. Now today, how do we do that? Radios, right? Everybody's got radios. The military uses radios. Everybody in the military's got a radio. They got throat mics. They got bone receivers on their ears. You see people walking around today, they either have HF radios or little, we're using little FRS radios at Shofar Mountain. They use them at Straightway. Everybody's got them. You can talk to everybody all at once. But you know what? Radios can be jammed. And jamming radios is within the capability of most people who decide they want to jam radios today. You know what you can't jam? Shofar. You can't jam a shofar, right? So do you think that, I'm serious. I think shofars might have a place. Do you know the Vietnamese army in the Vietnam War, the North Vietnamese army, they use bugles. They use bugles to sound their troops, and their troops, it worked for them. And also, evidently, talking to a couple, and I've known a couple of vets that fought against big masses of North Vietnamese infantry, they said when they started blowing those bugles, it was scary. Right? It's like, it's like, what is this, man? They're not using radios, they're using bugles, but it worked, and they were coordinated. So, do you think that they practiced those calls? Do you think that they had other people to relay the shofar calls? I think they did, right, to give them to everybody. And I said unto the nobles, verse 19, and of the rulers and unto the rest of the people, the work is great and large, and we are separated upon the wall, one far from another. Hey, we are spread out as a people all over the place. You can think about that in modern context, no matter what you're doing on your little farmette or whatever. I've got somebody down there feeding the goats. I've got somebody up there stringing wire. I've got somebody over there, picking radishes. And all of a sudden, I need to let everybody know what's going on. All right, we're all scattered all over the place. Verse 20. In what place, therefore, ye hear the sound of the trumpet, resort ye thither unto us. Our God shall fight for us. No matter where you are or what you're doing, when you hear the sound of the shofar, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, go to your battle stations. Go where you're supposed to go. Go where you hear the horn blowing. Go to where we tell you to go based on the signals. Go. Cool. It's a great plan. You think they rehearsed it? Because I'm telling you, if they didn't rehearse it, it wouldn't work. It would just be pandemonium and chaos. And so they had to take time out of their day to rehearse, maybe not every day, but they had to rehearse their actions on enemy contact. And that's important. And so he says, hey, do this, take this action, and Yahweh will ensure our victory. Yahweh's going to ensure their victory if, or you could say, but, they've got to do something. They have to take action. Yes, trust in Yahweh. Yes, rely on Him. Pray to Him first. Go to Him, and then go take some action. Just like, Noah. Yahweh did not build the ark. Noah built the ark. That was hard. I bet he was scoffed at, right? People made fun of him while he was doing that. He had to do the work. Joseph, we just read about this in Torah portion, he stored the wheat. He had it done. He had to do that. That was hard. That was different. Go to the ant, thou sluggard, Proverbs 6:6, and it continues for a couple verses. The ant works hard in the summer so that she has meat to eat, so she has food to eat in the winter. We have to take action. Verse 21, and so we labored in the work, and half of them held the spears from the rising of morning until the stars appeared. Just like at Shofar Mountain. They work from sunup till sundown, right? But here's the deal. Only half of them are really doing the work. Half of them are guarding at any given time. So how does that affect the pace of the work that's being done? You look at the number of people you have and you go, wow, I could get a lot done with everybody that's in this room right now. Until you say, well, half of them are going to be guarding. And of the half that are working and the half that are sleeping, probably a third on each side are going to, or the half that are guarding and the half that are working, probably a third on each side are going to be sleeping so that this work can continue and so on. So it starts tearing you down, number-wise. It takes people. This is an important point. It takes people to do this kind of work. A single family cannot do this. This goes to the survivalistic kind of plans of I'm just going to go with my family and live off by myself in the middle of nowhere, or I don't want to be with anybody else. One family can't do this. We are meant to live in community. We are meant to work together as communities. And I'm not saying necessarily in this case that it has to be a community like Shofar Mountain or Straightway or some of those other communities. I'm not talking about that, but you've got to be together with your community to make this work. There's a famous sign from Katrina of a bunch of it just looks like regular middle-class dudes. They look about half lit in a cul-de-sac somewhere, and they took a 4x8 sheet of OSB and they spray painted on it, "You loot, we shoot." It looked like they were having a barbecue and they all had their guns. But it was like, hey, don't come looting here because we're together as a community. All right, it takes a community to be able to do that. And that's something to think about. Look at verse 22. Likewise, at the same time said I unto the people, let everyone with his servant lodge within Jerusalem, that in the night they may be a guard to us and labor on the day. Nehemiah understood the need for community. He understood the need for bodies. He understood the need for people. Hey, we need people. We need people here that can guard, that can do this stuff. And so all you people living out there in the outlying regions, you Jason and Abby's and Justin's, come on up here. We'll put you to work up here. We'll give you something productive to do. And so we need these extra people. But here's something else. Where are you going to house these people? What are you going to feed them? How are you going to allow them to take care of their hygiene needs and shower and do all that stuff? You have to have a plan for that. Well, it could be your house. I've had people who say, hey, well, when it happens, I'm going to have my brother and his family, my mom and dad, and my sister and her family, they're all going to move into my house. Cool. That's a good plan. Where are they all going to sleep? Where are they all going to eat? And how much toilet paper do you have in your house? I mean, you have to kind of take that math and start working it out. How are we actually going to do this? And so Nehemiah had these things worked out. So those are things to think about if you're going to have extra people come, whether they're coming to your house, your farm, your community, or whatever. How are you going to take care of them? Verse 23, last verse. So neither I, nor my brethren, nor my servants, nor the men of the guard which followed me, none of us put off our clothes, saving that everyone put them off for washing. In times of danger, we need to be ready to fight all the time. Can you take that to a spiritual level? Right? You can, right? You need to be ready. You need to be fully clothed. You need to have your gospel armor on. I mean, we could go there in this sermon. But we're not. I'm going to keep this real basic. When I was in the military, when we were out in the field, we used to wear these combat harnesses. This is before everybody wore body armor all the time. But we wore these combat harnesses. And a lot of guys in the field, when they go to sleep, they take their combat harness off. It has a first aid kit and a flashlight and a knife and ammo and canteens and all that stuff on it. And they take it off and set it down next to them when they go to sleep. We'd never take ours off, ever, when we were in the field. So if we had to, at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, get up and run, we had all our gear on us. It was uncomfortable, but we were always ready to go. They teach you in Ranger School when you change your socks, and when you're an infantryman and you're walking through the muck and the slime all day long, you have to take care of your feet. And so you change your socks several times a day, and you powder your feet and you take care of them. You don't do them both at the same time. You take off one boot, you change one sock, you put the boot back on, you take off the other boot, you change a sock, you put it all back on. So you always have at least one boot on. I had a soldier in Special Forces who was in Germany doing an exercise, and they were being chased by French commandos. And there was a lull, and he was by a creek, and he'd been running for 3 days and not sleeping. And so he took off his boots, and he set them here, and he took off his socks, and he set them here, and he put his feet in the water. It felt awesome. And out of nowhere, this helicopter and these armored vehicles just pulled in, and guys started piling out. The bad guys chasing him, and he rolled to his right, and his boots and socks were to his left, and he ran for the next couple days with no shoes on his feet through Germany. And he finally met a farmer who built him like a pair of clog-looking things out of 2x4s and pieces of cloth that he nailed on like little sandal things. But he tells that story, and he was hard on guys who would take off both at the same time. Because he said, you know what I would have given to have at least one boot on my foot? I could at least all right, so something to think about. Stay dressed all the time. Here's the deal. Here's kind of like the larger tactical lesson there. Sacrifices have to be made for security. If you want to be ready to fight, sometimes you have to be a little bit uncomfortable. So, hard times, in this pastor's opinion, are potentially right around the corner. I think that at any given time with the current world situation, and you guys don't know me, but I know a little bit. On any given day, we're 3 days away from chaos in a lot of different ways, whether it's natural, man-made, stellar, whatever. 3 days, we could be in a totally different world at any given time. I'm not saying 3 days from now anything's going to happen. I'm not saying 3 days from now your life's going to be different. But I'm saying within 3 days at any given time, we could all be living very different lives. And we in this room know, that we have the protection of Most High Yah, right? He's got us. But there are still things we have to do. I just got in a big discussion on the internet with somebody on the Hebrew Nations website, whatever. Probably shouldn't say that, it's on YouTube. But there's things we have to consider. There's plans we have to make, and there's actions we have to take. There's things we have to do. And we have a great example right here with Nehemiah and the actions he took. He trusted in the Most High Yah. He put all his trust and faith in him. He prayed to him first and foremost, and yet and still he got busy. And that's what we have to do. We have to turn our eyes first and foremost towards Yahweh. And then we need to start doing things like we read that the people are doing here. You're going to need people. You're going to need weapons. You're going to need organization. You're going to need plans. These are all things that we should be thinking about now while we're comfortable and we're warm and we're drinking coffee and tea or whatever. And something else we're going to have to realize is that we're going to have to endure hardship. Things will be a little bit uncomfortable for us. And so start thinking about these things. Start praying about these things. Make your list, make your plans, and then take action. Start working. Get busy. And I pray the Most High's blessings on all y'all.